All right, sounds good. Well, we're right at time, just a minute past, so let's get going. Hi, everybody. It's great to have everybody here. I see some new faces that I have not personally met yet, so thank you for being here. I am Claire Royce. I am the PIAI's Training and Education Chairwoman. And today we have a speaker from California. Jay Paulino is speaking to us about using artificial intelligence in investigations, which is something we've been really wanting to get covered and learn about for quite a while now as an organization. So I'm very excited to have Jay speak for us. Jay is really a cool entity himself. He's won some awards, which now that I have my screen on something different. I don't have all my information up there where I had it. So I'm going to let Jay tell you a little bit more about what his background is. Um, for
Sure, that works.
the what that?
No, that works.
Okay, you can tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do. That would be really great. I'd love to have you talk about it. Before you get started, we have a couple of items of business to talk about. I'm going to encourage everybody to mute yourself so that we don't interrupt by accident. Jay will probably take most of your questions at the end, but he and I will be watching the chat as well. So if something integrates well with what he's speaking on, he may stop to address it. So if you have questions, feel free to just go ahead and put those in the chat. And especially as the presentation is wrapping down, coming into an hour, 45 minutes in, be thinking of what you would like to ask Jay, because we'll try to save some minutes at the end to address those. This presentation is being recorded. And so after it's complete, it will be up in our webinar library and you'll be able to view it there. And I think that the one more thing actually would be just to remind everybody that you can find us always over at YouTube and at our website, the piai.us. And I've got those links both in the chat. So please look us up. If you're not already a member of the organization, join us. We have a lot of cool stuff going on. With that, Jay, go ahead and take it away.
Well, thank you very much for having me. Good afternoon on your side of things. Claire, as I talk a little bit about myself, do you mind just kind of navigating through the website? It kind of highlights some of those awards that you talked about, some of the nominations. As Claire was saying, I'm a licensed private investigator from California. I'm based out in San Diego. I got my foot in the door as a private investigator back in 2008. At that time, I was a 19-year-old wrapping up college. We had a job fair going on at that time. And luckily for me, I had a sales job working at the mall. And so I left work early on that particular day. I was already wearing, slacks, a button up, a tie. And I showed up to the job fair. There was a gentleman there giving a presentation about the work of a private investigator. Fortunately enough for me, at that time, that particular company was doing that presentation at the job fair because they were looking for a bilingual investigator in the San Diego area. I happened to be fluent in Spanish. So after the presentation happened, the gentleman offered one-on-one interviews to anybody that was interested. At the time, I was very fascinated by the job and by the opportunity. At that age, I wasn't so sure what I wanted to do with my life, but private investigator sounded like a very interesting and exciting job. And so I met with this gentleman after the job fair presentation, and I was just honest. I told him, "Hey, I don't have any experience doing this type of work, but you talked about A, B, C, and D, and I'm confident that I can learn how to do those things." And fortunately enough, that gentleman that gave the presentation saw potential in me and gave me an opportunity. And ever since then, I was able to work for this private investigation firm. I was able to accumulate the hours that I needed to be able to take the exam to get my own license as a private investigator with the state of California. And most of my work has been working insurance claims involving bodily injuries. So I started off doing workers' comp. Eventually, when I got my own license, I started working with plaintiff lawyers. And a lot of the work that I've been doing these last 9 years have been focused on civil litigation regarding personal injury. And so because I'm very active in the field, and I'm, consistently going out and working different cases, anything from, an auto accident to premise liability to class action, mass tort cases, I'm extremely active. So it gives me the opportunity to, go out there and practice as much as I can my craft. And I was telling Claire yesterday that for me, I show up every day with my student hat on. I'm always eager to learn something new. And as we're out there in the field and we're learning how to do things smarter and not harder, once we master those things, for me, it's important to share knowledge. And I feel that me having that type of spirit to want to share knowledge and to help people around me become better, that's been a big reason as to why a lot of these doors have opened up for me to have national publications, to do statewide presentations. A couple of years ago, I did a presentation in Malaysia, teaching investigators from different countries all around the world the difference that the implementation of using drones with your investigations, the impact that it has, the quality of work that has, how that improves the work product, how to teach them how to get started and how to execute. Well, that was a big turning point as far as sharing knowledge and helping people get better. I'm not sure if a lot of you are very familiar with artificial intelligence, kind of pivoting away from drones. But in 2023, towards the beginning of that year, I got exposed and introduced to ChatGPT. I'm not sure if a lot of you here are using it on a consistent basis, if you are practicing at home, or what the case may be. But I got introduced to it in 2023. I know that it started to get introduced more in 2022, but for me, the introduction was in 2023. How that came about is an interesting story. I do a lot of volunteer work outside of work. I mentor a lot of youth, and the person that introduced me to ChatGPT was a former colleague of mine who I used to volunteer with, mentoring high school students, and I hadn't seen him for a while. And we were just catching up having lunch, and he kept talking about ChatGPT, making recipes for him and helping him cook and doing all these exercise routines and acting as a personal trainer. And I remember I was very, confused about it. I was wondering who ChatGPT was. So long story short, he told me about it. He shared a link with me. I created a membership shortly after. That same day, actually, I went home. I started practicing with it. I like to cook at home, and I live an active lifestyle, so I started using ChatGPT to help me, cook certain meals with certain ingredients. I then started kind of interacting with it to act as my personal trainer, creating certain workouts for me. And it was doing it in such a fast pace, and it was giving me very detailed information that was, easy to read, easy to navigate through. And then I just started to think a little bit more as far as, well, this can act as a personal assistant to a certain extent. Are there any private investigators that are using it as a assistant when it comes to investigations? And so I started using it and kind of plugging away with ChatGPT, and I'll talk a lot more about that in my presentation. But that's pretty much the exposure of how I came about learning about ChatGPT, artificial intelligence. And shortly after learning how to use it, I started, talking to people about this technology, and I caught the attention of a magazine company here in California that maybe some of you are familiar with. It's called Working PI. They were fascinated with what I was talking about. We worked on a piece together, so there was national publication about it. If you want to read that article, you can visit my website at www.jppinvestigations.com. There's a section where there's like publications and things like that. There's a particular link, so you can click on it there. And shortly after, it became, this big conversation, and it allowed me to then teach about ChatGPT at the annual conference in 2023 in the state of California in front of the private investigators there. And I'll tell you that at first, a lot of people were scared about ChatGPT. There's that notion of the movie The Terminator. Obviously, a lot of people started thinking, oh, well, this could potentially be the end of the world, and, robots are going to take over and we're going to lose all of our jobs, which, all of those are valid thoughts, whenever you're getting introduced to something that's unfamiliar and uncomfortable. And so with this particular presentation that I'm doing today, I want to educate you a little bit more on the positive side, kind of steering you away from those notions or those thoughts of fear or any thought that might bring some type of anxiety. So Claire, do I have your permission to share my screen? Yeah, okay. Let me share my presentation with you. Let's see, here we go. And then in the most famous words, can everybody see my screen?
Looks good to me.
Okay, sounds good. Here we go. So talking about the Terminator, I specifically picked this photo as a background. It kind of reminded me of the Terminator. So yeah, this is what the presentation is going to be about. It's going to be about artificial intelligence, quote unquote, the modern investigator, because I feel like this is something that is going to continue to grow, and it's growing at rapid paces. And I want all of you to understand how to use it, and also how to continue to solidify yourself as the investigator that is going to be hard to replace. So again, in the chat, who here has tried ChatGPT or another AI tool? If you've tried another AI tool, go ahead and drop it in the chat. Hopefully we can talk about that towards the end of the meeting. If you haven't tried out any artificial intelligence, but you're curious, if you feel comfortable, you can say me in the chat. And then today is about practical use and the high emphasis on not replacing you. Okay, I'm going to be talking about this a lot today in my presentation because I do not want people to feel that you're going to get replaced. And I'm going to give you some of my own personal recommendations as how we can solidify ourselves more as licensed investigators and to put ourselves in a position where it's harder to replace us. Artificial intelligence for me is something that helps me be more efficient. That's why I put speed when it comes to getting work done. It helps me structure a lot of the body of work that I do. And I'm a very creative person. I grew up with hobbies in photography, videography. When I was a lot younger, I used to love to draw. So like my creativity has always been there. But now more so as an investigator, you have to think outside the box in your working cases, and you have to think about, every single angle whenever you're looking at something, right? You want to look at it from the defense side, from the plaintiff side. You want to look at it from the juror's perspective. So creativity is going to be big. The nice thing about artificial intelligence is that it adds to our creativity. And so always remember, human judgment, ethics, and presence still matters the most when you're using artificial intelligence. I can't harp on this enough. I always talk about this component whenever I run into people at conferences and people come up to me and they want to talk about artificial intelligence, and maybe sometimes they pay full attention to my presentation, or maybe they just kind of skim through the article that I wrote. But I've come across people that'll come up to me and they'll say, hey, you know what? I started using ChatGPT and I think it's great. They're like, when I'm working on my reports, I just copy and paste all of my reports into ChatGPT, and then I just kind of help it, help me structure my report. And as soon as I hear that, like I instantly want to tell them, hey, when it comes to using these artificial intelligence platforms, confidentiality comes first. If you're not aware, platforms like ChatGPT, those platforms, use the data that you input into it so that their platform can become better. It goes hand in hand. We're helping each other, and so you have to always be mindful that the data that you're putting into these platforms can potentially be stored somewhere else, whether it's on a cloud or maybe they have like an engineer that is working on development of the platform. So you always have to be mindful of the information that you give it. So for me, I always try to be extremely mindful in practice by not giving ChatGPT confidential information ever. That's just the biggest thing that you have to remember, especially because we're private investigators and we're involved in legal work. We're going to have names of claimants. We're going to have dates of birth information. We're going to have address history. We're going to have names of witnesses. We're going to have names of companies. We're going to have names of different defendants, whether it's companies, whether it's people. So I practice not putting that information into these platforms. And I think that's going to be extremely helpful for you to be mindful and to practice. And as I always mentor people, I always tell people anything that you practice, you get good at. So if you are dabbling into this new world of artificial intelligence and you're getting ready to use these different platforms, be mindful that you're reading a lot of these user agreements when you're signing up. I know no one ever wants to read through it, but if you can, I would copy and paste the entire language of it, put it in a Word document, or save the agreement. Read through it yourself if you can. What I do is I'll read it, but I'll also plug in that language into ChatGPT, and I'll ask ChatGPT to review the language and to kind of isolate different things when it comes to confidentiality, and it'll outline, certain things. Or you can tell ChatGPT, hey, I'm a private investigator. I work with lawyers that hire me to do A, B, C, and D. I work on civil plaintiff cases. Tell me how the data that I'm going to be plugging into your platform, how is it going to be used? And then it'll kind of tell you based on the user agreement that it's already giving you. But again, I don't plug in any confidential information or any case information. So on that side of things, you don't necessarily have to worry too much. And I'll talk about how I use it when it comes to creativity, structure, and amplifying the work product. So we talked about that here. In the purple, it says, assume anything entered could be stored or reviewed. So just be mindful of that. How to use AI safely. Tell generalized stories. And that is in that blue box there. I like to practice storytelling a lot. I think it's very important to be good at telling stories, especially when we are the eyes and feet to maybe insurance adjusters, to lawyers that are hiring you, to the common person that is maybe hiring you for a particular assignment. You have to be very good at telling stories. What stands out to me about storytelling is when you think about the production of Disney, they have made a lot of money based on storytelling. And so when you think about yourself as an individual business or a business entity, think about that as well. Like, hey, there is power into telling stories. So for me, I practice generalized storytelling. Why is that important? Well, as you can see here in the green box, when I'm telling stories, I use an app on my iPhone. I'm an iPhone person. It's the dictation app. So I'll give you an example of me working a case. Typical auto accident case, I'll meet with a witness that saw an auto accident at a intersection. This person saw that there was a vehicle just stopped at the very front. There was a red light and the defendant came, rear-ended this person at a high speed, did not apply the brakes. There was no skid marks. There was no surveillance cameras. Well, based on what I'm telling you right now, I'm not giving you any confidential information. I'm not giving you any case details about the name of the plaintiff, the name of the witness, the name of the defendant. I'll finish my meeting with the witness. I'll open up my dictation app and I'll say, today is, Wednesday, February 11th at 12 p.m. I had a phone interview with the first witness, period. The first witness was 2 vehicles behind the plaintiff. This person saw the defendant driving at a high speed, swerved into the plaintiff's lane and rear-ended the plaintiff at a high speed. The witness said that the collision was extremely impactful and was surprised that anybody survived. In the first witness's opinion, the defendant was at fault for driving at an excessive speed limit and rear-ending the plaintiff at a red light. Boom, dictation is done. Copy and paste that into ChatGPT. I'll ask ChatGPT to act as my assistant in the form of an editor or a proofreader. I want ChatGPT to be able to revise it for spelling, grammar, and punctuation, and to be mindful that that dictated memo is going to be sent to my client, who is an attorney, period. ChatGPT takes all that information, spits out something that is nicely formatted, organized. I then copy and paste that information, put it into a Word document, and then I plug into that particular Word document all of the essential information that is missing. The name of the witness, the name of the plaintiff, the year, make, and model of the defendant vehicle, the color of the vehicle, the names of the streets, where it happened, the time. That's where the confidential stuff happens. I'm using ChatGPT more of an assistant to speed up the process in me finalizing my report. So that's why I say use terms like plaintiff, the defendant, first witness, second witness, third witness. And as you can see here in the orange box, I will reference seasons, months, and weather, not exact dates. If I want to dictate the emphasis of like the date of incident, I'll just put date of incident because it won't give you the day, the month, or the year. Why do I reference seasons? Well, whenever you're looking at an auto accident, it's very important to know, did this happen in the summer? Did it happen in the fall? Did it happen in the spring? Was it raining? Was it dark outside? Was it cloudy? Because those are all additional elements when you're looking at liability. Was there an issue with the area due to the weather? And so that's why I'll reference seasons instead of referencing specific dates. And again, this is just something that I do. You can probably create your own style in doing things. But by me just kind of generalizing things, it helps me practice, not input confidential information. So it's just a general story of what happened. I kind of talked about it right now, but yes, using ChatGPT for me personally just polishes my memos. As I'm practicing to tell stories and working on getting better at that every single day, ChatGPT kind of shows me where I need to improve when it comes to telling my story. So again, dictate a general memo without any identifiers. Make sure that when ChatGPT is polishing your memos, in your prompt, make sure that every detail that you're giving in that generalized story is important. That way, ChatGPT does its best to keep all of those details in there. Again, it's not confidential details. It's just the details that you told in that generalized story. And again, it's better to use ChatGPT whenever you want help to kind of clean up your grammar or just the structure of your report. You'd be pretty impressed with what it does with the dictations that you give it. I want to touch on another artificial intelligence platform today by the name of Claude. I haven't had the opportunity to use it very much, but I wanted to introduce it to everybody here because maybe somebody that is sitting in on this presentation will dabble into it a lot more and maybe become a master of using Claude. And then maybe one day in the future, I'll be sitting in on your presentation. But to talk about Claude, it's an AI platform focused on reasoning and writing. It's very strong at long documents and summaries, and it often feels more conversational and structured. So Claude is another AI platform that is out there competing with ChatGPT. One of my close friends, he works for a company out here in San Diego by the name of Qualcomm. He's a artificial intelligence engineer, and he's constantly, talking to me about all these updates and new platforms that are, up and coming in the AI world. And this was one of those platforms that he shared with me. He, in his own opinion, he thinks it's better than ChatGPT. So when he mentioned that to me the other day, particularly last week, I was like, okay, this is something that I'll just drop as a gem in my presentation. Maybe to somebody sitting in, we'll look into it a little bit more, master it, and then eventually do something bigger with Claude as well. This friend of mine also kind of shared with me a concern that he had heard about in the AI world. This is a particular, it has to do with AI agents. And he was talking to me about this program that they were, kind of testing out, where there's a AI agent that can operate full computers, your laptop. And so it can do everything for you internally. So it's just kind of like plugging it in. It can, create documents for you, organize things. The issue with the testing of these AI agents to have full control and access of your laptop was the people that were testing it, started to discover that there were some serious cybersecurity concerns because the AI agent having full access to somebody's laptop wasn't able to get access to, confidential information, credit card information from that particular user from that laptop. And so that became something to be concerned about. So when my friend was telling me about that whole story, I said, you know what, that'd be interesting to just kind of plug in and kind of talk about briefly, because there are going to be a lot of developments in the near future where AI is going to be implemented to a lot of things. Specifically, spreadsheets was one of the things my friend told me about. He said that there's going to be a component to adding AI be implemented with Excel spreadsheets. And his thought with that was it's going to eliminate, certain job functions, whether it's like being an accountant or a CPA. These artificial intelligence platforms and upgrades and additions are going to be implemented to things like, Excel spreadsheets. So it's just things to be mindful of. Those are things that are done on the computer. And, that's why it would be something to think about as far as the implementation of AI and how that can take away from certain job tasks and things like that. Another recommended tool that I want to share with all of you is called Trinka AI. This is something that I started testing with in December of last year, which is very recent. I started looking into this because I was interacting with ChatGPT a lot, and I was asking ChatGPT, hey, is there any AI platform out there that I can plug in, reports with confidential information for it to, create revisions when it comes to grammar, spelling, and punctuation, I'm sorry. In comparison to ChatGPT, obviously I'm not doing that there. So I asked it for like recommendations, and one of the top recommendations that it gave me was Trinka AI. And so I went on the website, and they have a particular like membership that you pay for, that is, instead of it being like the premium version, it's called the confidential version. And at the time when I purchased it, it was $500 for the entire year. So I purchased it just to give it a try. The cool thing about it is it doesn't store your data, or it doesn't reuse your data as well. And a lot of the professionals that are getting the membership with Trinka AI are professionals that particularly deal with, medical records and sensitive material. And so because of that confidential feature that it has, and it doesn't store your data or reuse it, Trinka is able to sell that particular confidential membership to people that maybe don't want to generalize storytelling the way that I do it, right? Maybe they don't have the time, or maybe that's just not their skill set, and they just want to plug in their entire report, kind of like that other investigator that I told you that was using ChatGPT in that form. I would say Trinka AI is more geared up for that type of uh, of work product. So if you're interested in something like that, just how it shows right there in the slide, it's called Trinka AI. Go ahead and Google it. Visit the website, kind of look through it. There is a specific membership for confidentiality. So if that's something that you're looking for, make sure that you are buying that confidential subscription. All right, so let's talk about what AI cannot replace, and this is something that I'm going to be talking about for quite some time as AI continues to grow and get better and be more efficient. We have to really hone in on our human skills, our strengths as human beings, our attributes that cannot be replaced by AI. And I was telling my friend, it's going to be really big to really hone in on those people skills that we have. For example, one thing that makes me a good investigator is when I go meet with a witness, I'm able to build a personal connection with them by being observant. What I mean by that, sometimes you meet with a witness and maybe they have a particular sports team on their keychain, or they're wearing a shirt with a particular sports team. And you can say, hey, how are the Dodgers doing? Or just making a personal connection, right? Before you get strictly into business, or hey, my cousin went to, San Diego State University. She told me great things about it. What was your experience like? Those people skills, right? To be able to make that connection with someone. And then obviously being able to be a kind person. For me, when I meet with witnesses, I love to educate them as far as what's going on. Interviewing witnesses is probably something very common for me, something that I do on a regular day basis for work. But for the witness, that's not common. That's not something they do every day for work. So for me, I try to practice kindness in the way of how I talk to people, how I treat people. I don't use big words when I'm talking to witnesses, or big big educated words. I like to talk to people as I was talking to my aunt or my cousin or my mother, in a very respectful tone and in a way where we have common ground. I like to give witnesses a lot of information of what's going on, what the process looks like, and based on what they're learning through that conversation, I always ask them if they are in a position to be able to help another human being, right? With providing a testimony of what they saw. And so that is a very important human component that obviously ChatGPT can do as of right now. So if you focus in on what makes you a great investigator as a human, as a person, and you really work on those skills, that's going to be extremely valuable to you in the future as AI continues to grow and evolve. You want to be good at those things that you can do in person, because right now ChatGPT lives in your phone, lives in a computer. Can it go out to the scene right now and put boots on the ground and go touch dirt and go look at things? Not necessarily. I mean, in the future, in the far future, maybe there are robots that have artificial intelligence and can go do all those things. But as of right now, in 2026, focus in on those things that make you a great investigator. Whether it's those face-to-face interviews, you have intuition too as an investigator. If maybe you're talking to somebody and you feel like they're not being truthful, well, what do? You learn to ask questions in different ways, right? You ask a question in different structures, and you soon learn that there's different answers, right, depending on how you ask a question. So really focus on that. I feel like if we can all get better at what makes us great investigators as people, that's going to add value to us. And if we learn how to use artificial intelligence, well, that's just an added bonus. You're going to be a very unique investigator in this new world of AI. You're going to be an investigator that's very good at doing the people interaction stuff and the scene investigations, but you're also going to be an investigator that knows and understands and is familiar with AI and how to use it. You're going to be more of an asset. So I just highly encourage you to kind of think that way. And And if you're closed-minded to it, well, then that's okay too. At the end of the day, we all have a choice on how we want to approach the new world that we're living in, and the type of professionals that we want to be, and how we want to carry out our businesses. So talking about, how I have been using AI as a professional. This year I'm going on 18 years of doing investigative work. I haven't hit that mark yet, but with 17 years of, working workers' comp cases, car accident cases, premise liability cases, all those different types of cases, as an investigator, I already have a set of questions that I want to ask whenever I'm interviewing somebody. But what did I say earlier during the presentation? I said, I show up to work every day with my student hat on. There's always room for improvement. There's always room to learn something new. And so, as you can see in the red, knowing what questions to ask is critical. And I'm going to tell you why. AI will help you with your questions when it comes to interviewing witnesses to a particular situation. Every auto accident is different. Not every auto accident happens at a red light. Not every auto accident happens on the freeway. Sometimes things just happen that are out of the ordinary. Maybe there was a semi truck that was parked on the dirt shoulder, and maybe while vehicles were driving on a highway or a freeway, maybe this semi truck just decided to merge into the lanes of the people that were already traveling there. Well, if you can generalize telling the story of what happened without giving it confidential information or case information, you could tell ChatGPT, hey, I'm investigating a case where these things happened. You could say it was dark outside, it was raining, the lights weren't working, the semi truck was coming from the shoulder, there was vehicles in lane 1, lane 2, and based on what happened, this collision happens. What type of questions do you recommend that I ask to be able to establish liability? ChatGPT will then look at all of those components, and then it'll give you a set of questions that it recommends. Again, AI is a great tool for creativity. I already know, a set of questions that I would ask when I'm looking at a particular accident with those set of facts. I look at ChatGPT's creativity, and there's going to be things that maybe I didn't think about. That's where the student hat comes on, right? I can then pick and choose, hey, I want to add these questions to my questionnaire. And so teaming up with ChatGPT or artificial intelligence, you do have a partner there. You have an assistant, you have someone that helps you be more creative. And so now when you're taking on these interviews, you have added ammunition as far as, what you want to ask, what's going to make that interview be more efficient. And then at the end of the day, when you report back to whoever hired you to look at that, they can be like, wow, you hit all of these different areas that I wasn't thinking either. So, try to use ChatGPT to be, more creative with the set of questions that you might want to add whenever you're working a particular case. Again, when you're interacting with it, tell it a general story of what happened without giving it confidential information. And then from there, you can team up with it and have a better list of questions. Um, there's a lot of conversations of people that use artificial intelligence in the wrong way. What's an example of that? Is someone that just doesn't do additional work, right? Maybe they just go to ChatGPT, they ask a question, they get the information that they want, and that is fact for them, right? They don't ever cross-reference it. Then they go and they present it, and maybe artificial intelligence was off by something or by a certain detail, where you're going to look foolish. As investigators, you have to be good at, cross-referencing information, making sure if ChatGPT or a different platform is telling you something and it's citing something, you got to do, some of the investigative work too. You want to go and cross-reference it, make sure that, it all makes sense before you present these things to, your clients, and then you look foolish. So number one, never rely on AI alone is going to be a good thing for you to think about. Two, verify facts independently. And then three, use AI as a creativity partner. Prompts are like interviews, and I always tell people that if the answers that you're getting from any artificial intelligent platform is not what you're looking for, or maybe you think the answers that you're getting are weak, well, in order to find better answers, you have to learn to ask better questions. This is what I often tell people. So again, we're investigators. A lot of our work is, interviewing witnesses, maybe people that are reluctant to share information. As investigators, we've learned that if we're asking a witness a particular question and they're not giving us the answer that we're looking for, we learn to ask that question in different ways. So same principle, same concept, do the same thing with the artificial intelligence platforms. Just learn to ask better questions. Refine your prompts like witness questioning, specific but generalized works best. Just kind of generalize things and just interact with artificial intelligence as a conversation by engaging and asking different questions, and you'd be surprised. You'll find a lot of different answers and responses. I've also used artificial intelligence to help me prep for my scene investigations that I do. It's great for creativity and for recommendations. As I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, I also do drone work here in California. And I had a particular case where a lawyer had reached out to me and they wanted me to go to this neighborhood and fly the drone in a 1-mile radius. To the attorney that was hiring me, it made sense to them. Like, oh, it's easy. You just fly the drone and fly it in a 1-mile radius. What the attorney wasn't taking into consideration was, certain, light poles or, trees, buildings, and all these different elements that were out there. And so I'm interacting with ChatGPT because I'm trying to figure out, well, how am I going to do this? I need a little bit more of an assistance here with trying to execute this aerial inspection. So I interact with ChatGPT like I was talking to it as if I was talking to my friend. I was like, hey, I need help, planning a drone inspection in a general area where there's, apartment buildings and trees and all these different things, right? Again, I'm not giving it confidential information or anything like that. But based on what I was plugging into it, it gave me recommendations of, flying the drone, like north and south. It gave me recommendations of how many feet, maybe flying the drone in grids through the intersections. It gave me a different list of recommendations from what I was originally thinking of myself. So in that component, like whenever you're looking at maybe going out to an area that's not, very common for you, whether it's, out in the middle of nowhere, or you have issues with, tall trees or tall buildings, and maybe you're a little bit hesitant of doing it and you need more guidance. Well, when you interact with ChatGPT, you can kind of share some of that through like generalized storytelling, and then ChatGPT can give you some recommendations as far as, how you want to, set up your inspection, or what tools you want to bring with you. And at the end of the day, obviously you don't have to do everything it tells you, but if you are open to learning, you'll find some gems in those recommendations, and you can implement it to what you're going to be doing when you're going out and doing the investigation yourself, which is something that ChatGPT can't do for you, right? So again, that's another component to your toolbox to continue to improve as an investigator, to make yourself irreplaceable in a sense. So yeah, the drone investigation example, again, I gave it a general description of the terrain, the 1-mile radius objective, and then AI assisted with the route planning, which is extremely helpful. You have no idea. Another area that AI has helped me be more efficient and helps me get work done, as far as, creating invoices and getting paid, because I know we all want to get paid when it comes to going out there and doing a job. I don't know about you, but maybe in the past, after you did, a lengthy investigation, you were out there for 8 hours, you interviewed witnesses, you went to different locations, your report writing, your case prep, maybe you ran all these background reports. Well, what I like to do when I finish a job in a particular day is I'll dictate what I did. Again, I won't give it case information, but I'll say, hey, I worked 8 hours of investigative time. My rate is X amount of dollars per hour. I drove, let's just say 86 miles today. I get reimbursed, X amount per mile. I also did case prep for 30 minutes. I ran third-party reports, which cost X amount of dollars. Can you summarize all of that and generate a easy to read invoice that I'm going to send to my attorney client? ChatGPT then creates the invoice text for me. I copy and paste it, put it on my invoice. I email it to my attorney client with a link that allows them to pay online, and I'm done. It doesn't take me that long. To be able to dictate that probably takes a minute or two. Copy paste it, put it on the invoice email. Let's just say dramatically, it takes 5 minutes to get all that done. Now I can move on to something, to a different project, a different case. But using it for invoices for me has been extremely beneficial. ChatGPT is really good at creating invoices when you give it, those details as far as like what your hourly rate is, your reimbursement structure, the cost of things, and then it'll be able to summarize it so that when the person that's going to pay you looks at the invoice, they read it and they understand, oh, okay, this is why I'm paying Jay Paulino X amount of dollars. There's a breakdown. So if you want to practice using it for that, I highly encourage you to do that. Again, I dictate all of my memos on my iPhone. It's through a dictation app. When I first started using it, I made sure that they weren't storing my dictation memos, my audio files, that my data wasn't being reused. I reached out to the company and I sent them an email just to confirm that they weren't doing any of that. And they confirmed it to me in writing. That's why I feel really comfortable using that dictation app, because they don't store my memos, they don't store my data, and my data doesn't get reused. So again, for people that have iPhones, the app is called Dictation. Okay, why does this matter? Less admin time. The less time you got to spend doing administrative things, the more time you're going to have to do investigative work. It also creates a faster turnaround for your clients. And for me, personally, talking about it, it's a big component for me to be effective, efficient, and to not procrastinate. Like I said, as soon as I'm done, working something, everything that I did that day is fresh in my mind. I dictate the memo. I have ChatGPT generate the invoice, and we can move on to something else. Okay, so general storytelling is key. Polish first, personalize later. Paste into Word and finalize the details there. That's where you can do all your confidential stuff. Don't do it on the AI platforms. And this allows you to stay in control. I'll talk a little bit about, some of the jobs that have been impacted by artificial intelligence. And that's, basic data entry roles, content rewriting roles, and customer support scripting. Jobs likely to change but not vanish. Administrative assistants, paralegal document prep, and report formatting roles. So big takeaway from today's presentation, AI changes tasks, not people. Investigators who adapt gain an edge, and human skills are still the foundation. That's going to be the big takeaway from today's presentation. Final thought for you to all consider: use AI to sharpen your skills. Like I said, I have over 17 years of experience interviewing witnesses and asking all these different questions. But, you're never too old to learn something new. And as you interact with AI, AI is a great tool for creativity. It'll kind of, give you certain questions to consider that maybe you weren't thinking about. So that's a good one. Protect confidentiality at all times whenever you're using artificial intelligence. And don't forget, you're still your investigator, which is the big positive here. And that's pretty much my presentation for all of you today. I know it was probably a lot for you all to take in, but I just kind of wanted to go over some general stuff that I've been doing as of late as a private investigator here in California. And if you have any questions or if you want to reach out to me or email me, my email is just jpaulino@jppinvestigations.com. Again, you can visit my website as well, which is just jppinvestigations.com. You can learn more about me. Some of the publications that I've done are on the website with some hyperlinks that you can click onto. There's a publication there about drones. There's a publication about artificial intelligence. So if there's anything that I can do to help you, please reach out to me. I'm more than happy to help. So thank you.
Jay, thank you so much. That was a fantastic presentation. Just what we were looking for. There are a couple of questions that have come through so far, and I'll encourage everybody, now is a great time. We do have just a few minutes before the end of the hour that if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. Jay, what I have so far is someone asked, how does Trinka compare to Grammarly? Do you have any knowledge about that?
I haven't used Grammarly too much, but the reason why I chose to go with Trinka AI was because of their ability to not, store my information that I'm putting into it or reuse it, and the fact that they sell a specific subscription for confidentiality. So I like that component. I bought the subscription. I do use it every now and then, but I use ChatGPT more often because I'm trying to practice more doing generalized stories. And I've noticed that that is probably the most efficient and beneficial thing for me. But there are going to be times where maybe, you do have, a report is X amount of pages long or something that is, extremely lengthy or has a lot of confidential information. Trinka AI would be a great platform to consider for something like that.
Great, thank you. Someone asked if someone wanted to take further training on AI other than the resources you've given us in your website. What else do you have? Do you have any recommendations?
I would say continue to look at your local associations or legal associations, whether it's like legal secretaries or different platforms in your area that do provide those continue education credits would be a good one. I know that different industries are all talking about AI. I know that here in San Diego, there's different lawyer associations where you have different professionals presenting on it. So it never hurts to go to your local meetups or visit some of these associations that provide the continuing education credits. But as far as like something that I've found online for the education component, I don't have any recommendations for it. If you're trying to learn more about ChatGPT, let's just focus on that for right now. The best thing for you to do is ask ChatGPT those questions and it'll give you some answers. I would say, practice interviewing ChatGPT as if it was a person and ask it all those AI questions that you might have and ask it in different ways and just see all the different responses that you get from it. And you can literally approach ChatGPT and say, hey, you know what, I'm new at using ChatGPT. I want to become more familiar with how to use it. What are some of your basic recommendations for like tips or guidance for this? And then ChatGPT will give you a nice little outline of what it recommends for you to be able to use it better. So I would say definitely experiment with ChatGPT yourself. If you have any particular questions about it, ask it. And then if you're kind of hesitant on the information that you're getting, well, that's where your investigation skills come into play, because then now you get to cross-reference the information. So that would be my recommendation for that.
Great, thank you. That's a good recommendation. I like the humor of asking ChatGPT to teach us about itself.
Yeah, it does a good job. It does a good job.
Mhm. Well, any final questions for Jay? Now's the time. Okay. Well, we have your contact, Jay. And oh, Sally, I see your hand.
So it
You're still
says, do
muted.
you ask ChatGPT what info it wishes you had gotten from the witness after you feed it the witness description of the situation? Do you put alt witness and interviews from same accident into ChatGPT and ask if there are issues? You know, that's something that I don't do. I so like after I interview, so before I interview the witness, right, I'll interact with ChatGPT for creativity for a list of questions. Boom, it'll give it out. At that point, ChatGPT already kind of has this fundamental understanding of what it gave me, so it has like a memory there, which is so interesting about ChatGPT. Um, so I'll do my job, I'll interview the witness, and then I'll generalize a story off of that interview without any confidential information, right? By just saying, the witness, the defendant, the plaintiff, the red car, the blue car, the intersection, lane one, lane two. By having that general story, ChatGPT doesn't know if the accident happened in California, if it happened in Idaho. It doesn't know who's involved, doesn't know what date it happened. And then based on the information that I've gotten, I now make a nice report, right, through the dictation. ChatGPT then structures it for grammar, punctuation. Again, I've created the prompt for it to understand to keep as much of the information that I gave it because it all matters. I, as an investigator and as a professional, I look at that report and I supervise myself. I look at my work product and then I look at, okay, it all makes sense because I'm the one that interviewed the witness. It all makes sense. And then I copy and paste that information, put it on a Word document, like I said, and then I do another little revision where I just kind of add the case details, right? The year, make, and model of the defendant vehicle, the name of the witness that I spoke with. I can reference now the actual date and time, the area, the location. So I structure it in a way where I can now make it a work product. And this is where experience comes into play because I've had 17 years of experience preparing these reports of the interviews that I conduct with witnesses. I am the one that gives it the final blessing. I say, hey, this looks great. I send it over to the lawyer, and then this is where human intelligence comes into play a lot more. Now it's my brain thinking, and now it's the brain of the lawyer thinking, and now we're looking at this work product, and now we're really dissecting what was collected. And at that point, like ChatGPT just assisted with grammar and punctuation, and obviously with the creativity of maybe some of the questions that we weren't thinking. But really, that whole work product is mine at that point.
All right, we have 2 minutes till the hour. Any urgent final questions?
Wait, Sally said I can share an invoice story that blew me away if you're interested. Yeah, Sally, I would love to hear what happened with your invoice story.
Okay, hi. Um, I had a 10-month case and it was a court appointed, so the court had to pay me. And I kept my invoice the entire time. But it was very basic stuff like attempted interviews with three witnesses or very simple. And a lot of it was repetitive. And I found out afterwards that they don't want you to repeat the same task, even though some days I would repeat attempted interviews with three witnesses. And the invoice was about $12,000, and they were rejecting it and saying that it was too repetitive and I needed to make it different. And I was so frustrated, I almost let that money go because I was like, I don't know what they want me to say. I told them what I did. So I put the invoice into ChatGPT and gave them the paragraph that they sent me rejecting it and said, please tell me how to change this invoice so they'll accept it. And instead of even it just gave me a brand new invoice that was accurate, but enough of what they wanted, and they immediately accepted it.
Wow, that's a
So
great
like
story.
in 30 seconds, it saved me $12,000 because I was about to give
Wow,
up. Yeah.
that is a great story, Sally. Yeah, that's what I would have done too if I was in your shoes. If I would have been frustrated, I would have been like, ChatGPT, just help me with this.
Right.
They're giving me a hard time about A, B, C, and D. Here's what I've created. Like, can you help me? And then yeah, your story. That's great. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. Thank you for your great presentation.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yes, thank you so much. That was wonderful. So many good ideas. I loved it. Um, we're at time. We've got Jay's information in the chat, so you can find him there, and you can find us there. So please go take a look at the links that we provided. Jay, thank you so much for your time. You were a wonderful presenter.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. And, maybe hopefully we run into each other at some type of conference, or maybe I visit Idaho or something like that. But thank you for your time, and I wish you all the best.
Thanks, Jay.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
Jay.